Right, I hope everyone can see the screen and you're all hearing me. I'll just pause for a moment if that's not the case. Right, no news is good news, I think. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Just want to share a few ideas, really springing from that Genesis chapter 1. We read that on the third day of creation, the land produced vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees, according to their various kinds. So this is stated in verse 11. So there we have the plants and the trees. And just want to bring to your attention that at present, there's 390,000 different types of trees and plants that have been recognised and catalogued. Huge amount. So when God sent forth this creative power to produce this vegetation, there we have the range, an amazing range, 390,000. And furthermore, approximately 2,000 new plants or trees are discovered each year, you know, on the average, 2,000. So this number, which I rounded up, obviously 390,000, just the three significant figures, is growing as man goes into rainforests and so on, goes to areas perhaps where men have not gone before, and they're discovering new plants. So there's this huge number. And I just put up the humble daisy there alongside. I've actually done a little talk on the daisy. It's not as humble as we might think it is. It's actually quite a complicated plant, and it's a lovely plant, not just to look at, but actually there's some beneficial health benefits that come from daisies, but I won't get sidetracked. I promised myself I wouldn't do that this afternoon. I'm just going to show you the picture. Each one of those plants, all 390,000 plus, are beautifully designed and ordered to function. And the humble daisy is, as I say, has a sophistication about it perhaps you wouldn't immediately realise. And that's just one of them. And then we come down to the fifth day. And on the fifth day, we read about the fish and the birds. So I've just highlighted there, the water teem with living creatures and let birds fly. So let's just think about the fish and the marine life for a moment or two. In fact, I'm doing the birds first. There are 10,000 species of bird. I will do fish in a moment. There are 10,000 species of bird, and that number's growing. And let me just show you this list. Some lovely names down here. These birds that I'm listing out here were all discovered and catalogued in 2021. And there's one more. This one here, and I've got a soft spot for that one because it's called the Puno Antipita. And Helen, my good wife, myself, were actually in Puno for about 2 or 3 hours once. It's in Peru on Lake Titicaca. I don't think we saw that bird, Helen. If we had seen that bird, we might have made ourselves the name. But it was discovered in 2021. We were there a few years before that. But the point I'm making is there's 10,000 different types of bird. And the list is growing. Just for interest's sake, there's about 250 different birds that come to the British Isles, whether it be a summer or winter visitor or resident. 250 different types of bird we have in this land. So that's the birds of the air. The fish. This is amazing. There are 28,000 different fish, but you read another source, and I've found a figure as high as 32,000. So I don't quite know why there's a bit of confusion on that. I've taken the lowest figure. So there's at least 28,000 fish that have been classified. No doubt that means they've got a Latin name. But it's estimated that there are between 50,000 and 100,000 different fish. So for the number of fish that are known of, it's reckoned that just as many still to be found. This is abundance of life, different types of life, 28,000 different types of fish. And there were 7 new ones discovered in 2022, last year. And I'm delighted to show you my favourite one of those. Now, isn't that handsome? It's a very small fish, apparently. I think it was in the Indian Ocean. And it's got the lovely, simple English name. I don't know what the Latin name is. The rose-veiled fairy wrasse. There it is. Only taken note of by the human race in 2022. So there are 28,000 fish and more. So when God created, he did. When he talked about the seas being full of life, full they are. So now we come down to verse 24, and we're into the 6th day. And on the 6th day of creation, we have livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals. So now we're talking about mammals and we're talking about insects. And so I'm going to share with you this fact that there are 6,400 different animals, mammals in the world. And I was astonished at this. I really didn't expect it. Between 40 and 50 new ones are discovered each year. I wasn't surprised with the birds, but I was surprised with the mammals. Maybe you're not. But as man goes forth, they're finding new ones every year. But there's 6,400 and increasing that we know of. And as for insects, there's 900,000. We're well on the way to 1 million different type of insect. And then we're into the guessing game again. There are estimates that the true figure of different insects, some have reckoned 2 million. On the basis that we found 900,000, with man looking deeper and deeper and further, we'll find 2 million. But there are others that say, no, not 2 million. Could be as much as 30 million. So you could put your guess to it, actually. I think your guess is as good as anybody's at the moment. But the fact is there are 900,000 ones that we know now. That's a fact. There's 900,000 of them classified. I don't know how many different types of insect there are in Britain, but I know there's 32, or is it 33, different types of ant. That's just in the British Isles. And I had to ask the question when I was doing this bit of research. I had to ask the question, has anyone estimated how many insects there are all told? Put every single one of them together. How many are there? And of course, nobody knows. But 10 quintillion has been suggested. That might be that many individual insects. You really hope they don't wage all of them en masse war against the human race, otherwise we might be in real trouble. There's 1 or 2 insects a bit scary already, but you don't want 10 quintillion grouping up against us. Anyway, that's a guess. The fact is, there are 900,000 different types, and there must be lots and lots of insects. Sadly, we're talking in rough terms here. On average, between 150 and 200 plant and animal species go extinct every day. They're just on the screen are just some of the famous ones. Taking the passenger pigeon, just briefly to say that when the Pilgrim Fathers went to the United States, to that promised land as they saw it in the 1600s, and they were on that eastern coast, northeastern seaboard of what we call the United States. When they landed there were passenger pigeons everywhere. They were so annoyed with them because as soon as they started to plant anything, these pigeons took the seed out the soil. and they were everywhere. And so they started the process to eliminate them. You can't find one now, sadly, in the United States. They've all gone. But there's 150, 200 going every day, mostly because of man's incompetence or greed. So now, about bacteria, that's life. And before I'll go any further, I want to put a good word in for bacteria. We were earlier talking about colds and flu and what have you earlier, which is fair enough. When we talk about bacteria amongst ourselves, it's usually the bad guys that we talk about, isn't it? But the fact is, the vast majority of bacteria are good, and we ourselves need bacteria for our own existence. So having said that and put a good word in for bacteria, there are 30,000 that have been researched. 30,000. So there's a lot of microbiologists, whatever they call themselves, out there doing mighty work. 30,000 different ones. Question is, how many different ones are there to be discovered? How many are out there? And if the number of insects is difficult, the number of fish is difficult, this number here, you really are into a guessing game. I've seen estimates of 10 million, and then others will say that there's got to be 1 billion different ones. There you go. Let's just go to what we actually know. We know there are 30,000 different bacteria. Job, in the book of Job, Job in discussion with his friends puts this point to his friends. And he's talking here in poetic language. He's not talking about this literally. We haven't got a Dr. Dolittle situation here. But nevertheless, he says this, but ask the animals, they'll teach you, or the birds of the sky, they'll tell you, or speak to the earth, it will teach you, or let the fish in the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every creature and the breath of all mankind. So Job, without having anywhere near the knowledge that we have, or even I have, he had seen enough, he was wise enough to realize that all that which was around him was of God. And the animals, the earth, the fish, everything had been created and sustained by the Almighty. And he makes that point, and he's basically saying, you go and consider, just consider God's creative hand, and it screams out at you that there is one greater than yourself. There is a designer. There is someone with a mind that's put this into operation. Ask the animals, they'll teach you. So, I've got a bit of a menu across my picture there. I'm just lifting it up. I'll show you that now, that picture. And you all recognise that, of course, as the moon. At least I hope you do. I could have done a bigger picture of the moon, but the reason why I haven't done that is because I wanted to show you this one as well. And we'll get the computer to work. There we go. This is just a simple, very simple depiction of the solar system as we know it. I'm sure you can see there, we've got the planets and one or two other interesting bits and pieces, asteroids and comets, whatever. Someone's trying to depict that in this diagram here. And of course, you can see the sun, top left hand there, you know, all going around the sun. This is the solar system. Now, why am I showing you the moon? Why am I showing you the solar system? I'm showing you this because I find that amazing. In the light of those huge numbers that I've just put forward to you this afternoon, I find that amazing. There is so much life on this planet in so many different forms, myriads. There's life everywhere. Sometimes we have life and we certainly don't want it. You know, mold that goes on the windows or whatever. You know, all sorts of places. It shows up and it develops. You know, moss on our roofs. It comes here. It's everywhere. Life is all around us. But nothing on the moon, nothing on Jupiter, nothing on Saturn, nothing on any other of the orbs that go around and the objects that go around in the solar system. There's nothing been discovered out there. The scientists sometimes, particularly those that believe in evolution, they get very excited at the prospect of finding something where there seems to have been water, because water is a vital ingredient, it seems, for life. They get excited that they've seen traces of where water may have been, etc. But the fact is, no one has found life anywhere else yet. And I don't think they will. There may be a day when I may be proved wrong. But I look at the facts as they are today. The facts that they are today is everything sterile out there. But by contrast, we have the Earth, this planet amongst the planets. We have Earth that's abounding with it, teeming with it. When I was a youth, I can remember the Apollo missions to the moon, and it used to excite me greatly. Still fascinates me now, perhaps not so much as when I was a youngster, but nevertheless. Apollo 8, I found that amazing. On Apollo 8, which happened about Christmas time in 1968, so it was a really good Christmas item. What we had with Apollo 8 was the first men not only to go into space, but to break away from Earth's orbit. Every other space astronaut or cosmonaut, from a Russian point of view, had gone into space, had gone into an orbit around the Earth. But these brave men of Apollo 8, they fired rockets from where they were, and they shot off, and they went into a lunar orbit. That took great courage, because once they went into a lunar orbit, they literally lost touch with the Earth. And it gets worse, because when they went around the dark side of the moon, which actually has as much light as the moon that we see, it's just hidden from our view. That's the only reason why it's dark. I assure you there is light on the other side. But when they went around what we call the dark side of the moon, they were cut off for something like 45 minutes from control down in Houston. They were literally cut off. So incredibly brave men. But when they came round, they saw that. It's almost like they had Genesis 1 reenacted before their eyes. You know, out of the darkness suddenly shone this wonderful, wonderful blue orb, which, you know, this picture is called the Earthrise. And on that mission, on that day, one of them quoted the first 11 verses of Genesis 1. Seems to me could do no other. Most of them had a Christian faith who went into space. And when they came back, their faith in God was even stronger. And as I say, on Apollo 8, Genesis 1, the beginning was quoted, and rightly so. And that Earth, you know, against that black, look at that thick blackness there, shines out. And I'll repeat, it's teeming with life, and everything else is barren and dead. And you can't have that more illustrated than the moon itself. And I have to say, I think it's folly that after 40 years and more, that the great brains of the earth who work in this study are trying to get men back into space and going to the moon again. I mean, They may have some good reasons for doing it, but they're not going to find life there. It's not a place that sustains life very well. Surely they learned those lessons from 40 years ago. Isn't God telling everybody that the earth is special? The earth is telling us it's been created and is sustained by the Almighty. And whilst the moon and the other orbs have their function, they do not exist to support life. The earth does. Now I'm going to talk about man. Earth is special. So is man. Of all those life forms, God tells us that the most precious one and the one who has the greatest potential is man. And so on that same sixth day, it reads on, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness. And it doesn't say now that they were created, and it was done so, and they were created and they were able to create after their own kind. It doesn't have that phrase, after their own kind. You notice we have that with the trees, the plants, fish, everything, after their own kind. It doesn't say that because it's different. Because mankind has got a greater potential. The potential is not only fit to have a physical likeness, but have a spiritual likeness. Mankind in our image and in our likeness. There's going to be a more protracted process in this. But that's another subject, really, for another time. Just say at the point at the moment, there's 7.888 billion beings on the planet, and that's increasing as I'm speaking. I know there are people sadly dying, but the birth rate is outdoing that death rate. I also know amongst those nearly 8 billion, there's a lot of hunger and there's a lot of difficulty, but most of that is attributed again to the wickedness and the greed of the rich part of humanity. Fact is, we have that population, huge population. Right. Just want to share this with you, which really surprised me. Thinking about man, now human being, and the creation of man. This character here, this Dutchman, in 1677, was the first person to take note of the sperm. And he saw it, and you can see how small it is. And the interesting thing about this, and he probably didn't know that at the time, but we know now for sure, it is the smallest of all human cells is the male sperm. He sees that, and he actually thinks it's some parasite. He's thinking it's some sort of parasite. But he observed it and made note of it. What I find surprising is when it comes to this character, which is over 100 years later, he's the one who talks and discovers the ovum, which, surprise, surprise, is the largest of all human cells, which the female brings forth. And I find it fascinating that taking the ovum, it's a single cell, and it's only produced at a rate of 1 per month. If all things are going well with a woman, 1 per month. And yet you look at the sperm, look at the figures I've got there, 200 million to 300 million. And it can potentially be more than daily. Incredible difference, huge difference. But why is it that the smallest of your human cells is the sperm and the largest of human cells is the ovum, when actually the human body's got 200 different types of cell? Isn't God telling us something? And from looking at this, why is there male and female anyway? That's the Lord's prerogative. And he designed it that way and set it forth that way. That's of his making, of his choice. But how do the evolutionists argue the case? Why is there male and female? Makes things very difficult. There's so many life forms out there. And when you think of human relationships, how difficult they are between the sexes, I tell you, in many ways, it might be much better if there wasn't male and female. Please don't quote me too much on that. You understand what I'm making from an evolutionist point of view? I don't really understand why it has to be male and female. I do also accept that there are some creatures that you haven't got the distinction between male and female. I think snails, for instance, are like that. But they're a very, very small group. The vast majority of life forms, there's a male and there's a female. That, to me, is a big, big question that evolutionists have to explain. And, well, they are. So, okay. I'll put to you now the smallest of human cells and the biggest of human cells. As I said, there are 200 different types. And the number of cells that make up me, that make up you, is estimated about 37 trillion. Nobody knows the exact number. You know, so for all the wisdom of medical science, etc., nobody can tell you how many cells make you up. But the wonder of it is those 37 trillion have got to work in harmony. And when some of them, for some reason, do not work in harmony, then we know about it, don't we? But when we're healthy and we're fit, how miraculous it is that we've got these cells that you can look at. If you've got the magnification there, you can look at individually, and yet there's 37 trillion of them working in harmony beautifully. This speaks to me of a creator. This speaks to me of a creator. I don't think this is by chance. Coming back to bacteria, it's estimated there's probably for every human cell that's on us and within us, there's 10 bacteria. So whether we like them or we don't, we start with them. It's 10 times as many bacteria or thereabouts on us and in us than what actually makes us. 1 to 3% of our body mass. If you take 200-pound adults, 2 to 6 pounds of us, really, in truth, is bacteria. And again, so many of them are needful. We need the bacteria. Has to work in harmony, has to work in conjunction. There's an interrelationship going on. There's some huge questions here for evolutionists to explain. There really is. But let's just think about what we can do. You know, I'm a simple man. I'm not too bright, but I marvel that I can sometimes get the key in the hole of the lock, especially at night, and it's dark. But that's a fantastic feat of coordination. It'd be great when they can get a robot to do that. They probably will. I'm not saying that won't happen. I think that'll probably happen. There may be someone somewhere who's actually got a robot that can do it. I don't know. But we just take it for granted. We put our key in the car lock. If we still got those, we have buttons these days, don't we? But we put keys in our front doors and so we hardly give it a thought. It's only when we change home and something, we have to do a little bit of adjustment for a couple of days maybe, don't we? But I've started now. I mean, the wonder of playing golf, the skill in doing that. Or a footballer, such as Pelé, who recently died, overhead kick. Irish dancing. I mean, to be an Irish dancer, the skill in that, and then to do it in a line of, I don't know, 10, 15 others and do it all in tandem to the music. Amazing. Or you get a wonderful youngster here, the protege, who actually can play classical music. Notice there's no music written in front of him, he's just doing it. The wonder of that. When are we going to see any other life form on the planet get close? Or you get a snooker player. Now let's just talk this one through. Mr. Trump here is going to hit that white ball into the black. The black will go into the bottom left-hand corner. If I did that on my own, I'd be really happy. Perhaps most of us in the room here are on Zoom. If you did that, you'd say, I've done well there. I've got that in. 7 points. Thank you very much. But it's more than that. You know, for these real top players, notice what the white does. The white, its path is marked on the screen. It goes between the pink and the blue, and then hits the top right-hand cushion, bounces off the top cushion, and then goes to where the arrow stops. It has to be in between the brown and the blue, because the next ball is the yellow. The yellow. And this is not even important, is it? It's just a bit of fun. For these people, a very luxurious form of fun, because they get loads of money for it. But it's just trivial, really, isn't it? And we can choose to like it or dislike the game of snooker. It doesn't matter. The fact is we can do it. And this person, from brain to arm to wrist, everything, it works, functions, does it? Then you get a Canaletto. How do you do that? You know, I go in art galleries, you stick me in front of a Canaletto and you're struggling to get me to move for 10, 15 minutes. I'm just in awe. Let alone the others all around me. Just give me him. I'm just looking at it. The detail. I know a dolphin is intelligent. I know some dogs are very intelligent. I know, Mr. Attenborough, that quite a few other creatures are very intelligent. But none of them come anywhere close to any of this. And I'm just warming up. Lift up the car bonnet. I'm not a mechanic, so consequently, I look at it. I'm looking for where the water is. I'm looking where the oil is, and I'm satisfied with that. But there's obviously some intelligence gone involved to put that together. Not 37 trillion parts, but there you are, a good number of parts nevertheless. And they have to work in harmony, don't they? Man can do that. Oh, somebody makes a wedding cake, a beautiful wedding cake. It not only has got to look good, and that's probably one of the best wedding cakes you're ever likely to see. Someone spent a lot of money on it, but it's also got to taste good, hasn't it? Take your iPhone, take the back off it. When it's broken, when it's no longer any good, of course, don't do it now, please. But take the back off and look at that. Look at the skill in that. The planning, the forethought. When is a chimpanzee going to be able to do that? Or someone writes the snowman. But I did this talk, I had it in mind because I guess it was just after Christmas. And even though this story's 40 years old, I still get a tear in my eye every time I see it or hear it. And I love the music. But Raymond Briggs, wonderful. The world of mathematics. Some of us are probably back off in horror, but for others, there's a wonder in that. And then you can get the tallest building in the world, shuttles, motorbike that go 200 miles an hour. A little word about Ukraine here. The Ukrainians are the ones that built the biggest plane, sadly, involved in war now. But no one ever think of the Ukrainians as not being very bright. They got that thing to take off. And then you get something like a cruise liner. Now, human beings have created this, and there's a whole world within that. It's not just the transportation and going from A to B. Then you've got to have the engines right and the fuel right and the steering right and all the rest of that. It's the world within it. There's got to be a bank in there. There's got to be restaurants in there. There's got to be sanitation sorted out. There's got to be a swimming pool. May even have to be a snooker table. It's all on there. It's a world within a world. The intelligence, the ability of men and women is staggering. No other creature can compare. So please don't be fooled when you hear of dolphins, which are beautiful creatures. And a few years ago, we had some bottlenose dolphins right near our fishing boat, and it was a great delight. And they almost seem to be intelligent because they seem to be waving to us and they're looking up and breaking the wall. They may well be intelligent, but they're a long way from any of this. And final screen, the skill in that. And this is very important to me, as it is for maybe a few of us in the room. The skill of the surgeon there, in whatever field it is, or Handel. There's the bit of music. And we don't just have Handel who writes Messiah. We get somebody called Beethoven who writes music and he can't even hear it. He can't even hear it. Oh, and then you get these characters. You go up with sheer face. Yosemite Park, I think it's in California, this one. You're going straight up. You won't get me doing it. But to be so concentrated in mind, so focused, to cast all fear to one side and be looking for the next hand and foot hole. Not to my liking. And then I'll bring this one nearer home. Medical science here. This is a stent going into the heart. I've got a stent, so I'm very thankful for this great achievement. And yet stents is being put into people's hearts now, very commonplace, at least in our country. So man's different, completely different, way above all other life forms, just as God said it would be. So there'll never be a fair game. There'll never be a fair game between a chimpanzee and a human being. And I just wonder how long it took to get that person to sit down like that. I'm talking about the man, of course, not the chimp. The chimp was dead easy. A couple of bananas and away we go. Now I'm getting serious, really seriously off track now, but that ain't going to happen. I mean, look at these things that all human beings can do. All those wonderful things. There are animals and our creatures that can do one or two of those. For instance, an elephant apparently will bury their own dead. An elephant will bury another elephant, which I think is quite impressive. So you will get animals that will do one or two of these things. But there's so many of them. No. Imagination, language, ability to calculate, appreciate heart. How about awareness of nakedness? Where else do you find that in the world? But it's in the human race. Wonder if it's got anything to do with Genesis. Wonder if it's got anything to do with Genesis chapter 3. Man is the only animal that blushes and the only animal that needs to. And Mark Twain said that. And how right he is. All those wonderful things. Creation, not evolution. The earth has been created for life, and we see it in superabundance. And God then says his greatest of all creative acts is to bring forth human beings, and the potential for human beings is huge. Even like unto God himself. And so 3,000 years ago, David, same David of David and Goliath, he said, "For you created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." Now, how about that for perception? David, 3,000 years ago, had nothing of the technology that we have, none of the understanding that I've put forward to you this afternoon, but he knew enough, and he's able to come up with these words here, which are so right. I'll praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, he says. I know that full well. So then, we rejoice that we know that the great Creator is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in love. If it were different, we'd be in a fearful place. But he is compassionate and he is gracious. He will not always accuse, nor will he harbour his anger forever. He does not treat us as our sins deserve or repay us according to our iniquities. For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is his love for those who fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far as he removed our transgressions from us. So we can come to know God and understand the compassion and the love of God. And we can realise that as a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. For he knows how we are formed, and he remembers that we are dust. And so, having been given this wonderful intelligence, having been given this wonderful potential, then we ought to recognise the weakness and the waywardness that so often gets the better of us, recognise our folly, and realise that without God and without his direction, we're altogether lost in sin, disease and death, and turn to him and learn of him and even desire to be like him. And so we should go on and seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. That should be our priority in life. And then hopefully, by his grace, we can be even like unto the Lord Jesus, and we'll be given a place in his kingdom, because we are manifesting forth that which other creatures certainly cannot do. Love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, does not boast, it's not proud. It does not dishonour others, not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. May that love be in each and every one of us.